Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be boosting your English vocabulary specifically for work.
Yeah, this would be great for anyone who, wants to really nail those presentations.
Or write emails that get noticed.
Totally.
Hmm.
Or even just, feel more confident when you're chatting with your colleagues.
Because let's be honest, having the right words
Yeah.
can make all the difference.
And it really can. It's interesting. We often think about vocabulary as something we learn in school, and then we kind of forget about it.
Right.
But when it comes to the workplace,
Yeah.
the words we use have a huge impact
Oh, yeah.
on how we're perceived,
Yeah.
how well we collaborate with others, and even how successfully we move up in our careers.
It's true. And it's not even just about sounding smart.
No.
It's about communicating clearly, building trust with the people that you work with,
Exactly.
and making sure that your ideas are heard
Absolutely.
and understood. So it's kind of like having a superpower in a way.
It is a superpower. And sometimes how you say something can be even more important than what you say,
Oh, that's a good point.
if you think about it.
Yeah.
When you're giving feedback to someone on your team,
Right.
using the phrase constructive criticism instead of just criticism can completely change how your message comes across.
Totally.
It shows that you're coming from a supportive place
Right.
and you want to help them grow.
That's a great point. It seems like that would apply to other words we use at work too, right? Because you might know the definition,
Yeah,
but knowing how to use it correctly is where the magic really happens.
it really is. It's all about nuance and understanding the context of the words that you're using.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's dive into some of those nuances.
Okay.
I'm looking at some of the Office Basics words that we have here,
Right.
and I think there are a few that could trip people up,
Definitely.
even if they seem pretty straightforward.
Uh-huh.
Like the word deadline, we all know it means when something needs to be done by.
Right.
But I've been in meetings where people have used it more casually.
Yeah.
And that can actually lead to confusion.
It can. And even when everyone understands the definition,
Mm-hmm.
using the word deadline correctly
Mm-hmm.
signals that you're organized, you're reliable, and you understand the importance of meeting your commitments.
Oh, so it's
That's
like,
like adding.
it's not just about being understood,
Yeah,
it's about projecting a certain image too.
exactly.
Ooh, interesting. What about the word agenda? We know it's like a roadmap for a meeting.
It is.
Yeah.
It helps everyone stay focused and make sure that you cover all of the important points.
Oh, for sure.
It also shows respect for people's time. Think about it. If you're in a meeting and it's just going all over the place,
Yeah.
you're going to start wondering, like, why am I even here?
Yeah, what am I doing here?
But when you have a clear agenda,
Right.
you know exactly what to expect,
Yeah.
and you can actually contribute.
I like that. That's a really good point, that it's not just about efficiency. It's actually about creating a more respectful environment for
Yeah.
everyone involved.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
And then another word, it's colleague, which I feel like, pretty simple word.
Yeah.
But using that word, I feel like,
Yeah, there's a level of professionalism.
yes.
When you use that word colleague, it's really about acknowledging that you're part of a team working towards common goals.
I like that.
So even if you have a close relationship with people that you work with outside of work,
Yeah.
using that term in a professional setting
Mm-hmm.
helps to maintain those professional boundaries
Right.
and ensures that everyone feels respected.
So it's like you can still be friendly and have good rapport with your colleagues, but
Yeah.
using that word helps to keep that balance
Exactly. Yeah.
between professional and
Yeah.
personal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of professionalism, let's move on to job responsibilities
Okay, great.
and some of the key words that come up in that context.
Okay, let's do it. I'm seeing words here like task, report, and supervise.
Yes,
These are definitely all words that you hear all the time
all the time.
at work. But I think it's easy to just kind of like glaze over them
Yeah,
without really thinking about what they mean.
for sure.
So let's break it down.
Okay, let's do it. Let's start with task.
Yeah.
On the surface, it seems pretty basic.
Yeah,
But if you think about it,
right.
the word task implies something very specific,
Uh-huh.
something actionable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a general idea. It's a very distinct unit of work that needs to be completed.
I see what you mean. So it's not just like, work
Yeah.
in general.
Right.
It's something that has like a very clear
Yeah.
beginning and end.
Exactly.
Okay. What about report?
Report.
I feel like that one can be tricky because it can be a noun, a verb.
Yeah, it can be a little bit of a chameleon.
Yeah.
As a noun, it's a formal document that presents information. You've got financial reports, you have sales reports, you have progress reports.
Uh-huh.
All kinds of reports.
They all serve.
They all serve a specific purpose, yeah.
And as a verb, it means to like communicate
Yes.
information.
Usually in a formal way, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I need to report my findings to the team.
Yes, exactly. And I think the different types of reports that we encounter
Yes.
often come with their own like vocabulary.
Specialized vocabulary.
Yeah, so understanding that
Yeah.
can really help you navigate your industry.
For sure, yeah. So report isn't just one word. It's actually like a whole world of words.
It really is. Okay, and then last but not least, we have supervise,
Yeah.
which basically means to oversee or manage others.
Right.
But there's a lot more to it than just, giving orders.
Yeah, there is.
Mhm.
Effective supervision involves providing guidance, providing support, feedback, and creating a really positive and productive work environment.
And I think having that vocabulary to explain what good supervision looks like is so important.
Yeah, it is. I actually once observed a team leader who was struggling to explain their responsibilities during a project
Wow.
because they didn't have the vocabulary to express that they were supervising a group of people.
Really?
And it really highlighted how even a simple word like supervise can make a huge difference in how you communicate your role and your expertise.
It's like having a limited number of colors
Oh.
on your palette when you're painting, right? You need
Yeah.
that full spectrum to really
Totally.
express yourself. Okay, are you ready to tackle meetings and discussions?
Let's dive in. This category is interesting. It's got some real gems here that can really make or break a meeting. Minutes, brainstorm, and consensus. Let's start with minutes.
Very
It might
nice.
seem tedious, but they're really important
Yeah.
for accountability and clarity. They're really a written record of decisions, discussions, action items, all that good stuff.
I used to think of minutes as just a formality, but I have learned that they can really be a lifesaver,
For sure.
especially if you need to go back
Right.
to see what you agreed on.
Exactly. And it's not just about capturing what was said. It's about capturing the context and the nuances of the discussion.
Right.
Good minutes can even help prevent misunderstandings later on.
Oh, totally. Okay, let's talk about brainstorm. I love a good brainstorming session.
Me too.
It's where the creativity comes alive.
It does.
But I've also been in some that just felt chaotic.
Oh, absolutely.
What's the secret to making them really work?
I think the key is to create a safe and open environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing ideas.
Mm.
No matter how out there those ideas might seem.
Right.
You don't want to judge.
Yeah.
You don't want to criticize.
Got it.
The goal is to get as many possibilities as possible, and then you can worry about refining them later.
So it's like quantity over quality in the beginning.
Always refine later, yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, and then there's consensus. Consensus.
Which, in theory, sounds great.
It does.
But reaching an actual consensus can be hard,
yes,
especially when you have different personalities in the room.
absolutely.
So what does consensus really mean in a workplace setting?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone agrees 100%. It means you're finding a solution
Okay.
that everyone can live with.
So it's more about finding that
Yeah.
common ground
Common ground. Yes.
than everyone getting exactly what they want.
Exactly. It requires active listening, good communication, and a willingness to compromise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm ready to move on to performance and feedback.
Okay.
I feel like these are words that sometimes can make people a little nervous, but they're important.
Oh, so important for growth and development, for sure.
Yeah, both personally and professionally. So let's break them down.
Okay. Let's start with achieve. That word is all about reaching goals, making progress. It's a very positive word.
So instead of saying like, you did a good job, you might say you achieved.
Your sales target.
Exactly. It sounds much more impactful, right?
Yes. Okay, what about evaluation?
Evaluation. Now, this word can sometimes make people feel anxious, but it's important to remember that evaluations are not just about pointing out what you did wrong.
Yeah.
It's about taking stock of performance, figuring out what your strengths are, and also, of course, looking at areas where you can improve.
Right. So it should be about growth,
Yes.
not punishment.
Exactly. And that actually brings us very nicely to constructive criticism.
Okay, so what's the difference between just criticism
Right.
and then constructive criticism?
That phrase, constructive criticism, is so powerful because it really highlights the intention behind the feedback. It's not about tearing someone down. It's about giving guidance,
Okay.
giving support to help them improve.
And it's that word constructive, right? It
Yes.
really highlights that it's meant to build someone up,
Yes.
not break them down.
Exactly.
Before we move on, I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier, and it was industry-specific vocabulary.
Yeah,
It's like learning a whole secret language.
it really is. It's super exciting. As you dive deeper into your profession, you start to encounter all these words and phrases that only people in your industry use.
Right.
And these terms actually allow you to communicate more precisely
And efficiently.
and efficiently. Yes.
Wow. So it's like you're given a whole other set of tools that you can use
Yeah.
in your job.
Exactly. And, the best way to learn this specialized vocabulary is to immerse yourself in it.
Oh, okay.
Read industry journals, go to conferences, have conversations with other people in your field.
Just surround yourself with the language
Surround yourself.
of your industry.
Exactly. And even if you don't understand everything perfectly at first, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But let's get practical for a minute. We've talked about all these great words and concepts, but how can we actually put them into practice?
That's a great question.
What are some tips that our listeners can use to
Yeah.
actually expand their vocabulary?
The good news is there's lots of fun and effective ways to do that.
Okay.
Let's start with something simple. Reading professional materials.
Mm.
And this could be anything from articles to reports to newsletters, even emails from your colleagues.
So it's making that conscious effort
Yes.
to engage with the language
Yes,
of
exactly.
your profession.
And as you read, pay attention to any words you don't recognize. Look them up.
Mm-hmm.
Make a little note of them.
Right. Keep a vocabulary journal.
Yes. Vocabulary journal. That's a great idea. And another classic technique that works really well is using flashcards.
Oh, yeah, the flashcards.
Write the word on one side, definition on the other. Test yourself,
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised how quickly you learn them.
I love that. And don't underestimate the power of conversation.
Oh, absolutely not.
Whether you have a language partner or a colleague, or even if you're just talking to yourself in the mirror.
Yes. The more you use those new words in conversation, the more confident you'll become.
That's a good tip. Okay, why don't we explore some real-world scenarios
Okay, sounds good.
where you could use this new vocabulary?
Okay, imagine you need to write an email asking for an extension on a project.
Okay, I've been there.
Yes, so have I. So instead of just saying, hey, I need more time, you could use a little bit more professional language
Okay.
to convey your request. For example, you could say something like, I hope this email finds you well. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I'd like to request a deadline extension for the project.
Okay, so already that sounds more professional.
And then you could follow it up with a little explanation of the situation and a proposed new deadline. For example, you could say, I encountered and briefly explained this situation, which has caused a bit of a delay. I'm confident I can complete the project by new date. Would this work for you?
Oh, I love that.
So it's very clear,
Yeah,
concise, professional.
Yeah.
But it also shows that you're taking ownership of the situation.
right. And you're offering a solution.
Exactly. And that's important. Now, how about giving a presentation?
Okay.
That's another scenario where vocabulary can make a big difference. Instead of just jumping into your content, you can use phrases like, today I'm going to be talking to you about, or first I'll give you an overview.
It's like you're giving the audience a little roadmap.
Exactly. So they know where you're going.
Yeah.
And as you move through the presentation, you can use transition words to signal shifts in topic, like now let's move on to, or in addition to.
Oh, yeah. Those little words can really make such a difference.
For sure.
Okay, and then, we talked about emails, we talked about presentations. What about participating in meetings?
Meetings? Yes. They can be tricky, but remember, active listening is just as important as speaking up.
Oh, that's true.
Even if you're not the one doing most of the talking, you can still contribute by really paying attention,
Yeah.
absorbing the information, and then offering your thoughts.
When the time is right.
Yes, when it's appropriate. There are actually some useful phrases you can use to acknowledge other people's contributions and kind of build upon their ideas. You can say something like, I agree with colleague's name point about, or to add to what colleague's name said.
Ooh, I like those. Because it really shows you're not just waiting to speak.
Right.
You're actually listening
You are listening.
what everyone else is saying.
Exactly.
And then if you happen to disagree with someone,
Yeah.
you can express that politely, respectfully, by using phrases like, I see your point, however, or while I understand your perspective, I believe. These are great. They're like little scripts you can use
They are.
in those sometimes awkward moments
Yeah.
that happen.
Yeah, they happen. And, the more you use them, the more natural they will feel.
It's about finding that balance
Finding that balance, exactly.
of being assertive, but also diplomatic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here today, from office basics to industry-specific jargon.
We really have.
We've seen how having a strong vocabulary can really help you communicate more effectively in the workplace.
And I think what's really important is we've given everyone some practical tips
Yes.
to actually grow their vocabulary.
Yeah, expanding your vocabulary is an ongoing journey.
It is.
It's not about memorizing the dictionary. It's about actively using language, exploring new words and phrases, and finding ways to make them part of your everyday speech.
So it's like we've planted the seed, but it's up to everyone listening to really water them.
Yes, I like that a lot. And as you nurture your vocabulary, remember, it's not just about work. A strong vocabulary is going to enrich every aspect of your life. It helps you express yourself more fully, connect with people, and understand the world around you.
It's true. It really is like unlocking a whole new level of understanding and appreciation for everything around you.
It is. So keep those dictionaries and vocabulary journals handy, keep learning, and never stop exploring the power of words.
All right, so now we are going to embark on a pretty exciting adventure
We are.
into the world of phrasal verbs.
Let go up.
What are phrasal verbs and why are they so important to know, especially in the workplace?
A phrasal verb is when you combine a verb with a preposition or an adverb to create a new meaning.
Oh, okay.
And that meaning is often totally different from the individual words themselves.
So they're like little word puzzles.
Yes. And they can be intimidating, but actually they're incredibly common
Yeah,
in everyday English, especially at work.
they add a lot of color
They
to
do.
the way we speak.
Yes. Mastering them is like a secret code to sound more like a native speaker.
Oh, I like that. Can you give us some examples of phrasal verbs that are used often in the workplace?
Yeah, let's start with follow-up. This just means to check in on something or someone after an initial conversation. So you might say, I'll follow up to the client next week to see if they have any questions about the proposal.
So you're taking that extra step
Yes,
to
exactly.
make sure everyone's on the same page.
To keep things moving.
I like that. What else?
Take on. This one means to accept responsibility for something, like a new project.
Okay.
You might hear someone say, I'm happy to take on the leadership role in this new initiative.
That's a good one. It makes you sound very confident.
Yes, it shows you're not afraid of a challenge.
Huh.
And then there's put off.
Hmm.
This just means to delay or postpone something.
Right.
Useful when you need to reschedule a meeting or push back a deadline.
We need to put off the launch until we've resolved these issues.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see now how
Yeah.
useful these are.
They're like secret weapons to
Yeah.
sound more natural and fluent.
So how can we get better at using them?
Well, pay close attention to how other people are using them in real conversations. Listen to your colleagues, watch videos, and maybe make a little note of any interesting ones you hear in your vocabulary journal.
Right. Be a word detective.
Yes. And don't be afraid to use them yourself.
Yeah, try them out.
See what happens.
It's all about finding that balance between sounding clear,
Yeah,
but also natural.
exactly. The more you practice, the easier it will become.
You know, as we've been talking about all these different words, I've been thinking about how much our vocabulary shapes our experience at work.
It is interesting, isn't it? The words that we choose have a big impact on how we communicate, how we build relationships, how confident we feel.
It's like the more words we know, the more tools we have.
I love that. And just like any toolkit, it's good to have a variety of tools. Knowing when to use them is important too.
It's not just about having a huge vocabulary, it's about choosing the right word and using it the right way.
Exactly. That's where our deep dive comes in.
Right.
We've given you some of the vocabulary you need to know, but it's really up to you to keep going, keep learning and practicing.
We've planted the seeds, but you have to water them.
I like that. As you continue to learn, don't forget that it's not all about work. A good vocabulary helps every part of your life. You can express yourself better, connect with people better, and it helps you understand the world better.
It's like you suddenly understand and appreciate everything around you so much more.
It is. So keep those dictionaries and vocabulary journals close by. Never stop exploring how powerful words are.
And remember, we're always here to help you on your journey to learn English. Come back to this episode anytime you need to, or check out our other resources, and don't be afraid to ask us any questions.
We love language, and we're so glad to have you here with us.
That's right. And now, before we sign off completely, I wanted to give everyone just a little something to think about, something to ponder as you go about your day.
I love that. What is it?
Well, you know how we've talked about how our vocabulary impacts how we communicate at work, and how those words can make us sound more confident
Yes.
and help us build better relationships with our colleagues.
Mm,
Well, I was thinking about the words I use every day and how they impact how I'm perceived and whether I'm actually communicating clearly and confidently.
yeah.
So I think we should all ask ourselves that same question.
I like that.
Yeah.
Take a moment to think about the words you use the most at work. Are you using the best words to express yourself and your ideas?
Right. Are they the words that are going to help you reach your goals?
Exactly.
So think about how you can start to refine your language to communicate more effectively.
That's such great advice.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget to be mindful about the words that we use,
We do.
but it's so important.
It is. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Well said.
There's always going to be a new word to learn.
That's the fun part.
It is the fun part. So keep practicing, keep learning, and don't forget to have fun while you're doing it.
That's right.
All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned some valuable tips to boost your vocabulary.
And remember, we're always here to support you on your language learning journey.
Happy wordsmithing.
Bye for now. Hey, everyone, and welcome. If you're here, I bet you're looking to power up your English, especially for work.
That's right.
Maybe you've got some big meetings coming up,
Oh, yeah.
or maybe you just want those emails to sound super sharp.
Absolutely.
Well, get ready, because this deep dive is all about those key words and phrases that can really make you sound confident and, well, professional.
That's what we're here for.
We've got tips, real-world examples, and we're even going to look at some of the jargon you might find in fields like tech, healthcare, and finance.
The stuff everyone wants to know.
And to help us connect all these words to actually succeeding in your career, I've got an expert with me today.
Happy to be here. It's true, though, sometimes we forget how important language can be at work. It's not just about, showing off your vocabulary.
Right.
It's about clear communication, working well with others, and, yeah, even getting ahead.
Okay, so before we jump into all the word lists and stuff, convince me. Why should someone even bother with all this vocabulary stuff? Can't we just, wing it?
Well, you could try, but picture this. You're in a meeting, everyone's using some term you've never heard before,
Uh-oh.
and suddenly you're the one frantically Googling under the table. Not a great look.
Not really.
Or imagine an email where you just couldn't find the right words and it caused a huge misunderstanding with a client that could have real consequences.
For sure.
Strong vocabulary helps us avoid those breakdowns, especially when you're working with people from different cultures and backgrounds.
Okay, I'm starting to see why it matters.
Yeah.
But isn't it a little scary trying to learn all these new words? Where do you even start?
Let's start simple with the office essentials.
Yeah.
Words you hear all the time, like deadline.
Everyone's favorite word.
Right. We all know it means due date, but it can be a lot more than that. Imagine you're working on a project, and the deadline is tied to a client presentation. If you miss that deadline, it's not just that the work's late. It could mean the client loses trust, the presentation flops, and maybe even the whole project's at risk.
Wow, that's way more intense than just forgetting to put something on your to-do list. So what about when you're stuck in one of those meetings where it feels like everyone's speaking a different language? Any vocab tips for surviving those?
For sure. How about the word agenda?
Okay.
It seems basic, just a list of topics. But a good agenda, it's like a roadmap for a productive meeting.
Yeah,
Everyone stays focused, you cover what you need to, and you actually get something done.
Instead of just rambling for an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've definitely been in those meetings that go nowhere. A clear agenda would probably help.
So true.
So deadline and agenda are on my must-learn list now.
Yeah.
What else is essential for, navigating the office?
Well, you're going to be interacting with a lot of colleagues, which sounds a bit more formal than just saying coworkers, right?
I guess so.
It implies more of a professional relationship, respect, shared goals. You might grab coffee with a coworker,
Sure.
but you collaborate on a project with a colleague.
Okay, I'm seeing how the right words can change the tone, make things more formal,
Exactly.
which is important in a professional setting. But let's be honest, work's about more than just meetings and deadlines. What about the words for what we actually do on the job?
That's a good point. Time for some action verbs, like task. It could mean answering an email or leading a huge product launch. Understanding the scope of your tasks helps you prioritize.
Oh, yeah.
And then you see how your work fits into the bigger picture. For example, you might be tasked with writing a report.
Oh, tell me about it. I've spent hours staring at spreadsheets wishing I was doing something more exciting.
I hear you. But here's the thing. Reports can be really influential. They inform big decisions, they track progress, they showcase your skills to the higher-ups.
Okay, yeah.
That simple report could be your chance to really shine.
I never thought of it that way. It's all about perspective, I guess. Even those boring tasks can be important. So what about people who want to be leaders? What words show you're ready to take charge?
Let's talk about supervise.
Ah,
It goes way beyond just telling people what to do.
yeah.
It's mentoring, delegating well, motivating your team, and handling conflict in a positive way. Think about a great manager you've had. They weren't just giving orders.
Right.
They were creating a good environment. That's good supervision.
Okay, I see how these verbs don't just describe your work. They can change your whole mindset
Totally.
and maybe even open up new opportunities.
It's all connected.
This is good stuff. But let's be real. A lot of work happens in meetings, and sometimes those can be like a vocabulary minefield.
Oh, tell me about it.
What are some words that can help us handle those discussions better? Seriously, I've been in those meetings where someone says, like, consensus. And I'm thinking, wait, do we all have to agree completely or what?
That's a great one to bring up. Because getting everyone on the same page, that's often the goal. But it's not always easy.
It's tough.
You need to have good discussions, really listen to each other, and be open to different opinions. Even if you don't agree,
Right.
it can actually save time in the long run. When everyone feels heard, you're more likely to, avoid problems later on.
Makes sense. But sometimes you just need to decide to move on, right?
Yeah,
Is consensus always the best way?
good point. Sometimes the majority vote makes more sense, especially if you're short on time.
Yeah.
But even then, trying to get some level of agreement can prevent people from getting upset.
And keeps the team working well.
Exactly.
Okay, consensus is going on my meeting word list. What else can help us make a good impression in those discussions?
What about minutes?
Okay.
Sounds basic, just notes. But imagine you're the one taking them. It shows you're organized, you pay attention, people trust you to get things right.
Yeah.
It's a small task that can actually help people notice you.
That's interesting. I've always seen taking minutes as a chore,
I know, right?
but now I see it as a way to show off my attention to detail.
Exactly. It's all about how you look at it. And speaking of showing off skills, another good meeting word is brainstorm.
Okay.
I once worked with a team who was stuck on a marketing campaign. We did a brainstorming session. Everyone threw out ideas.
Cool.
We came up with something totally new, and it ended up being a huge success.
That's awesome. So a word like brainstorm can actually spark creativity.
Totally. It's not just random ideas. It's about having a process to generate and refine them as a group.
And sometimes you find solutions you wouldn't have thought of alone.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got words for meetings, deadlines, teamwork. But what about those times we're getting feedback on our work? Those can be stressful.
They can be.
Any words to help us handle those better?
Definitely. Let's talk about achieve. At work, it's not just about doing something. It's about meeting a standard, exceeding expectations. You're not just finishing tasks. You're achieving goals, showing your value to the company.
It's about results, right?
Yeah.
Which is important for performance reviews and stuff.
Exactly. And then there's evaluation.
Ooh, that one can be scary.
I know, but it's actually a chance to show what you've done well, and you can get feedback.
True. I used to hate evaluations.
Me too.
But now I see them as a way to, reflect and see where I can improve. A career checkup.
I love that. A
Yeah.
career checkup. And speaking of improvement, let's talk about constructive criticism.
Okay.
It can be tough to hear sometimes, but if you see it as a way to get better, it can be really helpful.
Could you give an example?
Sure. I once had a manager who gave me some hard feedback on a presentation.
Oh, no.
He said my content was good, but my delivery was a bit flat. I wasn't really connecting with the audience. At first, I was defensive, but he was right.
Yeah.
I worked on it, and my next presentation went much better.
That's great. So even though it's hard, criticism can actually help you level up.
Absolutely. It's all about being open to feedback. Okay, so we've covered office terms, performance reviews. But I'm also thinking about how each industry has its own special lingo.
Yeah, it's like a whole other language sometimes.
Do we need to know everything from every field to survive?
It can feel overwhelming.
You don't have to be an expert in everything, but knowing some of the key terms in your industry can help a lot.
Can you give us a few examples?
Sure. Let's say you're in tech. You'll hear debug all the time.
Uh-huh.
It sounds simple, but it means finding and fixing problems that could affect a lot of people.
Wow, so it's a little word with a big impact.
Exactly. Or imagine you're in healthcare, you'll hear diagnosis constantly.
Right.
It's not just a word, it's the basis for treatment. It impacts people's lives.
It reminds us that words have real consequences, especially in a field like healthcare.
Absolutely. And finally, let's hop over to finance. A common word there is investment.
Okay.
It's not just about money, it's about understanding risk, potential for growth, making decisions that can affect a company's future.
It's about strategy.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm seeing how those industry-specific words are important. But this is a lot to remember. Any tips for actually learning and using all these words?
You don't have to memorize the dictionary. One easy thing is to pay attention to the language you see at work.
Like in emails and stuff.
Emails, reports, blogs, the more you see those words in context, the better you'll understand them.
So it's more about absorbing it naturally.
Exactly. This one might sound old school, but flashcards can help.
Flashcards, really?
Yeah. Word on one side, definition on the other. Quiz yourself. You can even add pictures or examples to make them more memorable.
I used to use flashcards in school. I never thought about using them for work vocabulary.
It can be really helpful. And of course, practice makes perfect. Try role-playing different work situations, meetings, presentations, those tough conversations.
Like rehearsing for a play.
Exactly. The more you practice, the easier it gets. And, our source actually has some great real-world examples. It shows how all these words are used in emails, presentations, meetings.
Perfect. Let's see how this all comes together. What's our first scenario?
Let's tackle email. We've all been there. You need to ask for more time on a deadline, but you don't want to sound unprofessional.
Ugh, I hate those emails.
The key is to use clear language and be respectful.
Okay, tell me everything. What does a good email like that look like?
First, a clear subject line. Something like, request for deadline extension project name.
Makes sense.
Then get right to the point. Why do you need more time? Acknowledge any problems it might cause.
So no long excuses or anything.
Keep it simple and professional. Then emphasize that you're still committed to doing great work, even with the new deadline.
So you're reassuring them that you're still taking it seriously.
Exactly. And end with a clear request, asking for confirmation and thanking them for understanding.
Okay, I'm feeling much better about writing those emails now. What's next?
Presentations. A lot of people get nervous about public speaking, but with the right prep and vocab, you can do great.
I hope so. What are your vocab tips for a killer presentation?
First, grab their attention right away and state your purpose.
Okay.
Then use words like first, next, finally to guide them through the information.
Like a roadmap so they don't get lost.
Exactly. Don't forget visuals. A good slide deck can make things more interesting.
Right.
And how you speak matters too. Use strong verbs. Avoid filler words like and like. Practice beforehand so you feel comfortable.
So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
You got it.
This is great. What's our last scenario?
Let's talk about meetings. Contributing to a discussion can be tricky,
It can.
especially if you disagree with others. But with the right words, you can express yourself and add to the conversation.
That's a skill I'm working on for sure. What words can help?
First, really listen to others and acknowledge their points.
Okay.
You can say things like, I understand your perspective, or I see what you're saying.
Showing respect before giving your own opinion.
Exactly. And when you disagree, soften it. I appreciate your point, however, or I see things a bit differently.
So you're being assertive but respectful.
Precisely. And when you give your own viewpoint, be clear. Use evidence or examples.
Not just saying what you think, but backing it up.
Exactly. And be open to feedback. Be willing to change your mind if someone makes a good point.
This is all such great advice. Before we move on, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Phrasal verbs.
Those are tough.
They can be so confusing.
They're those verb-preposition combos that can totally change the meaning of a sentence.
I know, right?
They're everywhere in English, and using them well can make you sound more fluent.
Okay, I'm ready to face my phrasal verb fears. Which ones are important for work?
One that's super common is follow-up. It's more than just checking in. It's about taking initiative, keeping things moving.
Showing you're on top of things.
Exactly. Another important one is take on. It means you're willing to accept challenges.
Like saying, give me more.
Right. If you want to impress your boss, show that you're ready to take on new things.
Okay, that's going on my list. What's the last one?
Let's talk about put off. We all procrastinate sometimes.
Wow.
But at work, it's important to be aware of deadlines.
And how your actions affect other people.
Exactly. So understanding phrasal verbs is important. They can really change the meaning of what you're saying.
This has been an amazing look at work vocabulary. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. And we've only scratched the surface. There's always more to learn about language.
That's what makes it
Oh my
so
gosh.
interesting. Okay, before we wrap up, let's recap the key takeaways and give our listeners some final thoughts.
Great idea. We've covered a lot today.
Okay, so we've gone through a ton of stuff about boosting your English for work.
We have.
My vocabulary notebook is bursting. It feels like we've cracked the code for better communication at work, but let's do a quick recap for everyone listening. What were those key takeaways?
Right, let's make sure it all sinks in. I think the biggest thing is we showed why strong vocabulary at work really matters. It's not about sounding fancy. It's about being clear, getting things done, and building good relationships.
Absolutely. And we started with those basic office words like deadline, agenda, colleague. They're like the building blocks, right?
Totally. But then we went deeper, talking about how even small word choices, like using achieve instead of just do, can change how you think and how you communicate.
It's powerful stuff. And I love that we looked at specific industries too, like remembering that debug in tech is a big deal or diagnosis in healthcare is serious business. It's all about using the right language for your field.
Exactly. Speaking the language.
I'm also way less scared of writing those deadline extension emails now.
Sure.
Thanks for the tips.
No.
And those presentation pointers, signposting language, strong verbs, visuals. I'm
Yeah.
definitely using those next time.
Awesome. And don't forget those learning strategies, reading at work, those flashcards.
Yeah.
Yeah, even role playing. It's about making language learning part of your routine.
Who knew flashcards could be so useful even after school? But before we say goodbye, is there anything else you want to highlight about the power of words, especially for our careers?
We talked a lot about the practical benefits, but I think there's more to it. The words we choose don't just show our thoughts, they shape how people see us.
It's like personal branding, right?
Exactly. It's not just about doing the work, it's about presenting yourself the way you want to be seen.
And if you're careful about the words you use, you can really control that image and build the career you want.
You got it.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I'm inspired to really pay attention to my language now, at work and everywhere else.
I hope everyone listening feels the same way. Remember, learning language is a journey, not a race. Be patient, celebrate the small wins, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, on this vocabulary adventure. Keep those dictionaries close, those flashcards flipping, and keep those conversations going. The world wants to hear what you have to say.
Until next time.
Hey, everyone. So glad you're here. If you're looking to polish your English, especially for work, you're in the right spot. We're going deep on this guide today, and trust me, it's packed with practical stuff. Way more than just like memorizing a bunch of words from a dictionary.
Yeah, people think a good vocabulary just means sounding smart,
Right.
but it's so much deeper than that.
Totally. This guide nails it. It's about being clear, working well with others, and honestly, it can really help your career grow. That actually reminds me, the guide mentions how important good communication is to employers. Have you seen that in your own work?
Absolutely. I've seen people, miss out on promotions because they just couldn't explain their ideas well.
Hmm.
And then on the flip side, I've seen others just totally kill it because they could communicate, build relationships and just present themselves confidently.
It's true. So this guide, it starts with some office basics like deadline, agenda, colleague. I gotta admit, early in my career, I once mixed up colleague and client in an email.
Oh, no.
It was so embarrassing.
Yeah, we've all been there, right? Just so we're all clear, deadline. That's the date something absolutely has to be done by. Agenda is that thing that keeps meetings on track, lists the topics. And a colleague is someone you work with, not a client who you're like serving or selling to.
Gotcha, that's clear. But this guide, it doesn't just stop at definitions, right?
Right.
It talks about like using these words strategically to make a good impression. How do you even do that?
That's a great question. Let's say it's deadline. Instead of just asking like, hey, what's the deadline? You could say, just to double check, the deadline is still Friday, correct?
Oh, okay.
It shows you're engaged, you're detail-oriented, and you're making sure everyone's on the same page. Those are all pluses at work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but yeah, it totally changes things. The guide also gets into words about job duties, stuff like task, report, supervise.
Yeah, totally crucial for understanding your role in the company, right? Being able to jump into projects, be a solid team player.
And then there's meeting language. I feel like that's where things get tricky, especially if English isn't your first language. Words like minutes, brainstorm, consensus.
For sure, those can be tough. Minutes.
Yeah.
That's the written record of what went down at a meeting. Brainstorming is all about getting those creative juices flowing, coming up with ideas, and consensus means everyone's on board with the decision.
Okay, let's talk brainstorming for a sec. The guide says it's like this key skill for new ideas,
Mm.
which is huge in any job. Any tips for doing it well in English, especially if you're not a native speaker?
That's a good one, and one I get a lot. First off, just getting ideas out there. Don't worry about perfect grammar or trying to sound fancy.
Okay, keep it simple.
Simple is best. Then go for quantity over quality at first.
Oh, okay.
Get tons of ideas out, even if some sound crazy. You never know what'll spark something brilliant. And don't be shy about building on what others say. It's a team effort. You can say, building on what colleagues' names said, or that gives me an idea.
Those are great tips. I'm going to try that next time I'm brainstorming.
Hmm.
Now, what about when it's performance review time? Things can get a little, tense. The guide talks about words like achieve, evaluation, constructive criticism. And I know those can be intimidating, especially if you're still learning the language.
Yeah, I hear you. Those words can be loaded. It's good to remember, though, these conversations, even if tough sometimes, they're really about growing and developing. Achieve, that's about hitting goals. Evaluation, that's the process of assessing how you're doing. And constructive criticism, that's feedback meant to help you improve.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So how do we handle those situations better, especially getting criticism?
When you're getting feedback, really listen, try to see their point of view. You can even use phrases from the guide like, I appreciate your feedback, I'll definitely work on specific area. Shows you're open to it and want to improve. And when you're giving feedback, focus on what they do, not who they are. Instead of you're always late, try, I notice you've been late to a few meetings lately. Is everything okay?
Wow, that's so much better. Way less like, you're attacking them. This guide also points out how important it is to know the lingo for your specific industry. It even gives some examples I wouldn't have thought of, like debug in tech or diagnosis in healthcare.
Totally. Those are like the secret code words for your profession, right?
Yeah.
They show, your stuff to colleagues and clients.
So true. When I first started in your industry, I felt like I was learning a whole new language. It can be overwhelming.
Oh, for sure. But it's also, really empowering. Think about it. What are some key words from your industry that would sound totally foreign to people outside of it?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that one. That's a good one. I'll have to think about that one. But let's move on to actually growing our work vocab. This guide has a few ideas, like reading stuff from your field, using flashcards, practicing conversations, watching work-related videos, even keeping a vocab journal.
It seems like a lot, but the good news is you don't have to do it all at once, right? Just find what works for you and stick with it. Me, I'm a visual learner, so I like videos, making pictures in my head for new words. But if you learn better by hearing, maybe podcasts or just talking to people is better.
I love that you mentioned podcasts.
Yeah.
Such a good way to learn. The guide also says it's not enough to just know the words. You got to use them.
All right.
And they actually give examples of how to do that in emails, presentations, meetings, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. Knowing a word and using it confidently in the right way, those are two different things. The guide's great at showing you how.
Okay, let's look at one of their examples. They have this sample email about asking for more time on a deadline, which, let's be real, we've all had to do at some point.
Yeah, that's a classic. And it's a perfect example of how even little word choices can make a big difference.
Right. The email uses phrases like, due to unforeseen circumstances, or to ensure the highest quality outcome. Sounds way more professional than just saying, I need more time.
It does. Those phrases, they sound urgent, but also professional, like you're committed to doing great work, even if things get tough.
It's like a crash course in email etiquette. I'm stealing some of those for sure. What I really like is they give you a template you can tweak for your situation.
Exactly. Don't gotta reinvent the wheel. Use that template and just, plug in your own project details.
Brilliant. Okay, we got to talk about phrasal verbs. The guide has a whole section on them, and for good reason. They're tricky even for people who've spoken English a long time. They focus on ones you hear a lot at work, like follow up, take on, put off.
Phrasal verbs, they're so key to sounding natural, fluent in English, especially at work. But yeah, they can be tough.
I once told my boss I was putting out a project instead of putting it off. She was a little confused.
Oh yeah, I bet. putting out has a whole other meaning there. Your story just shows why it's so important to get those nuances. Follow up means to check in after, like the first conversation. Take on means you're going to handle something, a task or project. And put off, that's just delaying something.
So context is everything. But honestly, sometimes I feel like I need a translator for those things. Any tips for getting better with them?
One thing that helps is to, break them down. Think what each word means on its own. Like with follow up, follow means you're continuing something, and up gives that sense of finishing or checking in.
Okay.
And like with any new word, practice, practice, practice. Use them when you talk and see how they work in different situations.
Makes sense. It's all about practice, doing it over and over. We've covered so much. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. This guide is seriously packed with good stuff.
It is. It's not just words on a page. It's like a map to becoming a better communicator at work, more confident, more effective.
I love that. A map. And it's a journey, not a destination, right? We don't have to become like vocab geniuses overnight. Baby steps, being consistent and just being open to learning and adjusting. That's what matters.
Exactly. It's about progress, not being perfect, right? So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you really want our listener to take away? I'd say be proactive, Don't just wait around for chances to use these new words to, fall into your lap. Make those chances yourself.
I love that. How can our listeners do that?
Volunteer for that presentation you've been putting off, maybe. Speak up more in meetings, even if it feels a little awkward at first. Chat with a coworker in English about work stuff. The more you actually use these words and phrases in real life, the more natural it'll become.
Such good advice. It's like anything, right? The more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. So many insights. Huge thanks to our expert for sharing all this knowledge.
Happy to do it. I always love talking about the power of language.
And to you, our listener, we hope this was helpful. Loved guiding you through this stuff. As you go about your day, we want to leave you with a question to think about. How are you going to put this new vocab into action? What steps will you take to, level up your communication at work? It's a question just for you, and we hope you'll really give it some thought. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep shining.